Last week, with quite a bit of hype, Omarchy version 4, Omarchy Quattro, launched. And in case you missed it, it's a Linux distribution created by DHH, who of course is definitely a controversial figure to many. Now, I haven't used Omarchy. This is not an Omarchy review or hype video. I instead have thoughts about the direction we're heading to when it comes to software development and how we use computers, and something I find super exciting about Omarchy, even though I haven't used it yet. Now, of course, it's also worth noting that besides all the hype, we also have kind of the opposite reaction. We have some Linux diehards who rather keep the ecosystem locked down and who don't seem to believe that Linux should be for everyone, that you have to sweat blood and tears and fine-tune your distribution for months in order to be a valid Linux user. But of course, that's just a loud minority we should ignore. And I'm sure there are parts you can criticize about Omarchy, parts that may feel vibe coded, or maybe that it's essentially DHH's flavor of Linux, which it is. It's marketed as that. Omarchy, the name comes from omakase, which is this concept where the chef chooses what you eat, and it's the same here for the operating system. You can have controversies about all of that. You can criticize all of that. And again, I have not used it yet. But two important thoughts here. For one, I think it's just great if Linux gets more approachable and usable. And more importantly, I'm convinced that the philosophy of Omarchy Quattro specifically, which is that it's mollable, that you can easily add plugins and tweak every aspect of the operating system easily with help of AI, that this is the way to go. Because that is, frankly, what you see in other parts of software development too. I mean, take something like the Pi coding agent, on which I have a course, by the way, if you want to learn all about it. The idea behind this agent is that you can make it yours, that it has a rich extensions system, again, about which I talk in my course, which allows you to add any feature you want, adjust the UI, and really make it your coding agent or AI agent in general. And I'm convinced we'll see much more of that in all areas, in all kinds of software we interact with. And the operating system is the perfect example for where you would want something like this, in my opinion. Now, it's also the perfect example where you can mess up a lot. Obviously, if I mess up Pi, I can reinstall it in the worst case, or just drop all extensions, and I'm good to go. If I mess up my operating system, that may be a bit harder. But again, of course, you can, if you embrace something like such a plug-in system, probably end up in a world where even if you do mess up, you can just drop the plugin where you messed up and you're good to go again. But maybe we'll also see operating systems, or in general software, that are more snapshot based, or that have mechanisms that make it easy to go back to earlier states if you break something, so that breaking it becomes a natural part of evolving it, and so that you can really make it yours. Because obviously, especially right now, this is not for everyone. This is niche nerd stuff. I'm totally aware of that. But being able to quickly add a certain feature to a piece of software or to an operating system is just an amazing thought. And of course, I can vibe code some software and use it on my Mac or on my Windows machine too. And this can get you so far. And just to be very clear about that too, vibe coding can be perfect for that, but depending on the complexity of what you want, there also are limits to it right now, and it's easy to vibe code something that's then impossible to maintain. But there also are many one-off tools or basic tools where you can get great results without ever looking at any code or thinking about the code architecture or even the language you're using at all. There basically exist both things right now. And I think having an operating system that has this philosophy of extending it, of being dynamic, and of being mollable, built in just as tools like Pi have it, is very much the future. at least in the niche nerd world for now, but maybe also in the broader world in the future. And I don't know if Omarchy is the perfect operating system for that. You could make the argument that something like NixOS is much better for that, since NixOS is based on that idea of easily configuring it, or maybe not easily, but of configuring it in declarative ways, a bit like you can set up a Docker file as a blueprint and then spin up containers. You could create an entire episode just about NixOS, but you could argue that the template-based or configuration-based approach of NixOS is better for this vision. My understanding just is that NixOS is not very AI embracing, but maybe it's a new Linux distribution that's created that fits that picture better, or that fits that vision better, to put it like this. But I like the fact that Omarchy is kind of a pioneer when it comes to extensible operating systems. And at the same time, it's of course not just that. It's also, as I understand it, much more approachable, not ugly out of the box, and just works out of the box, which is not necessarily the case for all other Linux distributions. And of course, if you're a Linux diehard, nobody's stopping you from starting right from scratch, right on Arch, and then fine-tune that manually or with AI, however you want. I just think this vision of having very extensible software, where extensibility is built in and a key part of its philosophy, that is the future, or one of the key parts of the future of software. Which does not mean that the surrounding software should be vibe coded, or does not need care and need maintenance, and should be developed by people who understand what they're doing. And that all is true, and especially for the operating system, I think should stay true. I'm not talking about running on top of a vibe-coded, carelessly created operating system, but I think being able to make an operating system truly your operating system in an easy way, without spending months of diving through or reading through documentation and then wasting time on that, that is a really, really interesting idea. And that's the main takeaway for me from what I heard about Omarchy thus far, and that's what I want to get out of my software in the future. But of course, as always, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that and what you think about this vision of software and operating systems.